Welcome to another segment of Playhouse in the Parks, Technically Speaking. We are so excited today to be joined by one of our favorite princesses, Tessa Northcutt. You may remember her from shows like Once Upon a Mattress, The Addams Family, and quite a few others we're going to talk about today. So welcome. Thank you for joining me on this brand new series that we're doing. So before we get started, just tell us a little bit about how you got involved at Playhouse in the Park.
Yeah. So I started my sophomore year of high school, and that was the first time I auditioned. It was for The Addams Family, directed by Rusty Jones, and it was super fun. I was in the ensemble for that show, and I just kind of got hooked.
Awesome. So what keeps you involved at Playhouse?
Definitely the people. This sounds really hokey, but like Playhouse is such a great community. Like everyone is so friendly, and it's just a really positive environment to be in. So I really love that.
I agree with that. So let's start at the beginning. You're an actress. I know you've done other things at Playhouse. You've assistant directed, everything like that. But we're talking today about acting. What are auditions like? For people who've never been through an audition, I bet that's nerve-wracking.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends on the kind of show that you're auditioning for, where you're auditioning. Places like Playhouse, community theaters, you'll usually come in, sometimes if it's a musical, you'll need to prepare a part of a song, but it's usually a cold read, which means that you'll come in and the director will have chosen some scenes for you to read. So they'll give you your scene and you'll have a couple minutes to look over it, and then you'll just read for whatever character they ask you to. Some other places, a lot of universities, or if you get more into professional theater, they'll ask you to prepare a monologue or two as well, which sounds really daunting, but it's not a big deal. And a lot of times directors will like give you notes during an audition, ask you, can you do that again, but do it this way. And that's just to see if you are directable. So that's kind of what an audition looks like. It's a lot of waiting around, really.
So have you ever messed up in an audition?
Oh, all the time.
So if you've never auditioned and you're scared, you know.
Oh yeah.
She's done leads at Playhouse and she's messed up.
Oh yeah. And it's important to just let it roll off.
Yeah.
That's such a big asset that you can have, is to be okay with not being perfect. To just roll with it and keep going, because if a director looks at that, that's important, because on stage you're going to make mistakes.
Right.
Yeah, I mess up on stage all the time, and it's important for you to just be able to roll with it.
Right.
So honestly, that can work for your advantage if you mess up in an audition and are able to just keep going.
Awesome. So you've auditioned, you've gotten the role. What are rehearsals? What is Tech Week, which we've talked about before in other episodes, where Tech Week is where all the teams come together to do costume, light, sound, all of that. So how does that look for an actor? For an actor,
yes. Tech Week specifically, a lot of patience. So a lot of actors dread Tech Week because it's a lot of, we add lights and sound and costumes and all of these technical aspects. Right. That makes sense. And so all you hear all day long is hold. And so it's a long day, and you'll get maybe 2 lines out, and then you'll stand there and wait for lights to get just right, or a cue to happen. And so it's a lot of standing around and waiting. Right. But Tech Week is the most important week of rehearsals because the whole show is coming together. Right. Because the show is so much better with the lights and the sound and the costumes and the everything. And at Playhouse and other theaters like us, Tech Week can also be, for an actor, can also be when you help paint sets. Yes. And you come in and you help pose for lighting and stuff like that. So an actor kind of has a hand in all sorts of teams because, I mean, in a community theater, we're looking for all the help we can get. Right. So you're volunteering for maybe to bring in some costumes, and so you're kind of joining all the teams.
That's awesome. So back to rehearsals a little
Yeah.
bit. What does that timeline look like with, typically at Playhouse, I know we use about a 6 to 8 week schedule where from auditions to the time the show launches. So what does that look like for you? Learning lines and choreography. Can you give me a basic timeline of what that would look like?
Yeah. So for a musical, which is usually more structured that way, you usually start learning music.
Okay.
So you'll spend a week or two coming in learning your music. And when I say learn your music, that's also, you'll come in and they'll teach you the song. You might run through it, and then you're done. And then they assume you know it. So then the rest of rehearsals, you need to be going home and reviewing, because we don't have time to spend to keep reviewing music and choreography.
Yeah.
But the dedicated time for music is usually at the beginning. And then we'll usually jump into blocking with choreography, kind of put in here and there in the beginning. So you want to learn your music before you start choreography, obviously, so that you kind of know the song. And then there's blocking and then run-throughs. Yes. And that's when, you already know where to go and what to do. And so you're running through the whole show, and the director is looking less at, okay, this is how I want this scene to work, and more at, okay, how does this actually read? Yeah, I think you're playing a little bit too much anger here. Let's pull back on that sort of thing. Yeah. So you get more kind of technical in the acting.
Yeah. And blocking, for those of you that don't know, is stand in this spot, walk through that door. And a lot of the scripts have those blocking instructions in there, but because different theaters are different shapes and sizes and have different wings, you've got to adjust that to the theater you're playing in. Right. So that's what she's discussing. And I've watched that. That can be frustrating, because you can do it a certain way so many times, and then you're like, we don't like that. Let's go to something else.
Yes, blocking changes all the time. Bring a pencil.
Yes,
a pencil, not a pen.
So that is your tip.
Because you erase all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
So what other types of things are you responsible for during the show? Maybe props, or what else? What else do you do?
Yeah, like during the show, like while the show is happening,
or
like
learning, or getting ready, or running, however you want to answer that question.
Right? Yeah. So during the rehearsal period, like I said earlier, you're responsible for. Sometimes you need to learn your music on your own. Like if you're in a lead, they don't always go over every solo song, because you can listen to it on YouTube and learn it.
Yeah.
And so learning your music, reviewing your music, learning your choreography, reviewing your choreography. Learning lines, obviously. That's something that you are responsible for doing very early on. And then, lots of times during shows that aren't super whimsical and fanciful, that happen like in what we call real life.
Real life. Yeah.
A lot of times you'll be responsible for your own costume. So if your character would wear what we are wearing now, then a costumer might ask you, can you bring in something that looks like this? So because it already fits you and
you're comfortable in it.
Exactly. So you'll often be responsible for at least some of your own costumes. Props, costumes and props can kind of be an issue right before a show and during a show, because that's a huge responsibility of the actor, is to know where your props are and know where your costumes are and make sure they are where they are supposed to be when you need them.
Right.
Because one of the most stressful situations is when you go off stage and you need to grab a prop before you go back on and it's not there.
Right.
And then what are you going to do?
Or you have to run in the wings and completely change clothes and run back out.
Exactly.
You don't have time to go to the green room.
And if you're missing your left shoe, you're missing your left shoe. So that's a huge thing that actors need to do beforehand and make sure is in place.
Yeah, I've been backstage a lot when there's been missing left shoes, or
it's not good.
One time we couldn't find the ham for 1776, so we had to we cut up bubble gum, and the guy was eating bubble gum on stage, acting like it was ham because it was pink, and we couldn't think of anything else.
And there you go. Yeah.
So you do crazy things backstage all the time.
Oh yeah.
So from an actor's point of view, what is your time commitment like for a show?
Yeah. As far as rehearsal period, it varies. During the beginning, you're not there quite as much as during the end. Like Tech Week, you're there all day, every day. But Average, probably about 3 hours, about 4 days a week. So, I don't know, math, what's that, 12 hours? That sounds right.
Yeah.
12-ish hours in rehearsal. And sometimes you'll have, Saturday rehearsals and things like that. And then you're also responsible for learning your lines and reviewing your music and your choreography. So that's a little bit more time outside of rehearsal. So probably around 15 hours a week-ish, depending on where you are in the rehearsal process.
And I do know Playhouse, when you audition, you're allowed to write down, I forget what they're called.
Conflicts.
Conflicts, yes. That's not the word I was going for, but yes, conflicts. It was the word I was going for, but it's not what was in my head. So conflicts, and so if you need to be on vacation for one weekend, your cousin's getting married, you let them know ahead of time, and they work around that with you.
Yes.
So that's really nice. I'm sure there are other theaters that may not do that, but we do that. We understand everybody's volunteering.
It's very convenient.
So, do you have any personal rituals or warm-ups you like to do? I know that's kind of an odd question, but people are always learning, and this is a learning thing. So what do you do before a show to get yourself ready to perform?
Absolutely. Well, if it's a musical, always vocal warm-ups. Those are important. And sometimes even if you're not in a musical, depending on your character and what you have to do, and especially if you're doing a character voice, if you're giving your character like a different voice, you might want to do some warm-ups to get your voice ready, or do some so I have like silly phrases that get me into like different accents. And sometimes I'll just like say that phrase in my head over and over again to like get me into the accent. So that sort of thing, warming up my body, stretching, even if it's not a musical, even if I'm not doing choreography, acting is active.
Yes. That's a good way to put that.
Yeah. So I think you should always be thinking about, what's coming up for my character. Where am I right now? Like, I'm not in the ether. Like, while they're doing something on stage, my character is somewhere. And so next time I walk on stage, what have I been doing? And what's my purpose for being there? What's going on in my head? Did I just get in a fight with somebody? Am I mad? And I think that's super important, that you just don't like wander on stage, that you don't just exist on stage, but like, and it doesn't always have to be like, I got in a fight and I'm upset, and like sometimes it can just be like, I can't find my pen, like where's my pen? And that can be a purpose for walking on stage, but like you have to have one.
Right.
So that's something really important to think about, I think, before and during a show.
Well, with this series, we had said we were going to raise the curtain and let you see backstage. And I'll tell you, during a show, you'll see a lot of actors kind of going over into corners by themselves, maybe pulling their script back out to look at notes they made for themselves. Backstage isn't a party, I can promise you that. It's very quiet. Well, for the most part. Sometimes we get a little loud in the green room. But it's supposed to be very quiet, and the actors are typically doing that. They're going over in the corner, like she said, and trying to find their purpose for going on stage, or trying to find their motivation. The scene before, you may have been super happy, and the next one you have to be super ticked off.
Right.
And you've got to get yourself there. You can't just, the transformation doesn't happen just because you walk through a curtain.
Right.
So that's kind of fun. I wish we could film backstage sometime.
I know. That would be interesting.
Very interesting. So let's see. What are the best and the hardest parts of being an actor, you think?
That's a great question. For me personally, I really enjoy comedic characters. So, I mean, I really like getting a character that I haven't played before. That's always really interesting. But my kind of passion for theater started with comedic characters. And so my favorite part is getting to kind of play on stage, and getting to be wacky and dumb and just kind of, and make people laugh. That's my favorite part. The hardest part, I think, I've been thinking about this question. You gave it to me a couple days ago, and I've been thinking about it. I think the hardest part that I've encountered is trying to create chemistry with someone that's not there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to try and make a relationship seem natural that's not.
Because you just met the person.
Right, yeah. And that doesn't always mean that you don't get along off the stage. It just means that your stage instincts might not match up with theirs. So that's just something that kind of throws you off and you kind of have to adjust to. And when I say chemistry, you kind of automatically go to a romantic relationship, which can be very difficult if it's not there. But that is the same for all kinds of stage. I mean, parent and child relationships. Best friends, that's so hard if you don't mesh.
I've never thought about that before.
Yeah, it's really difficult to fake that.
So acting isn't just acting. There's layers to it. There's building the relationship. There's what your purpose is.
Right.
There's the actual lines and the action the playwright intended. So this isn't just walking out and pretending to be somebody else.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's deep.
It's oh no, I touched the mic. I'm so sorry, Kevin. I didn't mean to. Yeah.
That's another thing actors have to deal with. They have to wear mics on stage.
It's a lot. Those malfunction a lot. They fall off. It's a mess.
Yeah, they're taped to your skin.
Yeah.
You have to wear character shoes that are probably not the most comfortable.
Yeah. Those tear up real easily, and it's a real nuisance.
Well, I want to go back to what you said about comedic acting for a second.
Yeah.
My favorite scene ever, I think, in Playhouse is in Once Upon a Mattress. I'm in love with a girl named Fred. And you just flopped around the stage. She was pretending to be inebriated at this ball. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how you kept a straight face. Because that is one of the funniest scenes ever of any musical. It's my favorite musical anyway. But you just were flopping and the audience just roared. How did you do that?
Well, I mean, it's my favorite thing to do. Yeah. This is part of what I would recommend for anybody acting at all, whether you're in a comedic role or not, but just to make big choices. And if a director doesn't like it, they don't like it, and they can tell you that. But I mean, just go for it. If in your head you think, well, this might be funny, it might not, just do it. Yeah. In rehearsals, not during a show. Yeah.
Don't make big decisions
during a show. Don't make big decisions during a show. That's
like the second biggest rule of theater. Yeah. The first one is don't touch other people's props.
Oh yeah. But yeah, during the rehearsal, that's what the rehearsal period is for.
Right.
So just do it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. There's no reason to be embarrassed for that. You were doing what you're supposed to do. So yeah, just go for it. Just do it.
So the biggest challenge you've ever faced in the theater, do you have a story there of the hardest thing you ever had to overcome, or
a corset?
A corset.
Other than the chemistry
not the answer
thing,
I expected, but that's awesome.
Yeah. Other than the chemistry thing, it's probably the corset. I was in Much Ado About Nothing at Murray State, and it's a Shakespearean play, and it was set during Shakespearean times, and there's a scene in it where my character was like overhearing her friends talking about her, and so I was like running all over the state, all over the set, and like squeezing in things and crawling up and down, and I didn't get a costume until Tech Week, and then I got a corset. And for those of you who don't know, it's like this thing that sucks all your insides. Yeah, right here, and you can't bend. Like, this is how you have to move, and you're kind of like a Barbie doll. And then I didn't think about it. I was in a skirt and a corset. And I did that whole scene with all the running around and the squiggling and I got stuck. During Tech Week. I had to like crawl under stairs, and it was like a very small hole, and I got like halfway through, and I was supposed to like come out the other side, and it just didn't happen. Like, because I couldn't bend, and so I was just like there. So
that's awesome.
That was a challenge. Not to mention, it's a little bit difficult to breathe. So running around anyway was rough.
Yeah, and she's not kidding. Theater is an active sport.
Oh, yeah.
I have seen actors come off stage drenched in sweat before.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you also have, not all the time, but sometimes you have big old costumes on, and you're under lights, and sometimes you have wigs, and it's a whole...
Or you have to wear knee pads because one of your scenes you get thrown down on the ground and you don't want to hurt yourself
Right.
because you get thrown down 7 nights in a row.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's your favorite show ever
My favorite show ever
that you've done?
that I've done. It's probably a tie for very different reasons. Once Upon a Mattress, where I played Winifred, that we talked about earlier. That is one of my all-time favorite shows that I've done. That's my favorite character that I've ever played.
You were great at that.
Thank you. Fred was so much fun to play. Just because I love the comedic, wacky characters. And so she was just my ultimate, like, okay, here you go, do whatever you want. And it was like, yeah. So I just got to play, and it was awesome. My other one was probably my most challenging show I've ever done. It was Much Ado About Nothing. I played Beatrice, who is an extremely complex character, and like nothing I had ever played before. So I think I really grew through that character as an actor. And again, that sounds kind of hokey, but it's true.
Well, with Lisa Cope a few weeks ago, we talked about how some shows they select are for the actor's growth. They want those.
Yeah. So it was wonderful. I had never done Shakespeare before, so that was new. That was a challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of character was new to me, and I really enjoyed being her, exploring that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So wrapping up, what advice would you give to somebody who's never walked through the doors of Playhouse, but keeps seeing these ads pop up on Facebook, maybe not right now because we're in a pandemic, but is seeing ads pop up for auditions, and they're thinking about it, and should I, or would I fit in, and what would I do? What advice would you give that person?
Do it. I mean, like I said earlier, just go for it, especially in auditions. That's what a director wants to see. Even if they don't like a choice that you make in auditions, they will note that you made a choice, which will honestly set you apart. A lot of people don't want to do that because they're scared that, well, if I don't play this how the director sees it, then he's not going to cast me, so I better just play it safe. I'm just going to read the lines. But if you make a decision, the director knows that he doesn't have to tell you every little thing to do.
Right.
He can direct you, and you can create a character yourself, which is kind of what acting is about.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't be afraid to audition, because you'd never know what a director's looking for. It might be you. It might be what you have to offer. And then also don't be afraid of the ensemble. Some of my favorite shows that I've been a part of have been in the ensemble. And you can definitely shine in the ensemble. I think it's a great place to be. So don't be disheartened or scared of that, because I think it's a great place to start. It's a great place, even if, I still get cast in the ensemble all the time, and I still think it's super fun, and it's super worthwhile.
And even if you don't get cast, there's plenty of ways to still jump into a show.
Oh yeah.
I've auditioned for stuff, and I still joined the costume team, or I did something else, because not everybody can be cast every time.
Exactly.
But you may make an impression at your audition, and the next director may be like, I'm looking for this person, and that director goes back and says, let me tell you about this girl I saw. She'd be perfect. So you never know until you show up.
Yeah.
So.
And exactly. If you don't get cast, that does not mean that you weren't good, or that you will never be cast. It just means you weren't right for that show.
Right.
I have been in the director's seat before, and I have seen people who were so good, and I wish I could have put them into my show, but they just didn't fit that time. Right. But I would love to put them in a different one. Yeah. So don't let that deter you from auditioning again. And as you'll see through this series, there are so many teams that are so important and can be so fun. So like Lindsey was saying, join those. Yeah,
there's so much. You're gonna learn a whole lot over the next few weeks. Thank you for joining us. We are so glad that you came.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. And thank you guys for joining us. As always, be sure that you check out the rest of our Facebook page. There's a ton of information below that you can check out. message our director, and she can give you information on volunteering, how to donate, what our current needs are. And we'll see you next time on Technically Speaking. Bye.
Okay.
Yay!
I could never do a full show.
I know. I felt like I was talking a mile a minute.